Oh, there it goes.
We got it.
Start by Mike Hornbaker. There it
There
goes.
we go.
All right.
There we are. All right.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Let's do this here. Over here. Okay, so normally I do this with a salesperson, but you know, salespeople. So I have sales in my title. I like the engineer part a lot better. What I'll try to do is create big buckets of framework and just get narrower and narrower. So I'll start with like, what are the 4 major things that we do, and how do we do it, and what do we do about it when we do something. And then if you want to, I can talk about architecture and how we have to sit in so Silverfort, born to bring MFA into the MFA list. I'll get into this a little bit more, but common cloud structures are built with MFA in mind, right? You got Azure, you got Okta, you got other elements, and you turn on MFA, or maybe they have their own product, or you just tie it in with a single sign-on to something else, and then your phone lights up and you log into the web. But you know, when you think about your directory, definitely not built for that. Making some jokes about legacy technologies before you got here, but it just isn't. So that was one of the areas that we were born for, is to bring MFA into your Active Directory authentication. And another thing that I say about that is, if we can see it authenticating the Active Directory, you can do something about it, one way or another. Right now, it's our biggest tie. I will say by the end of the year, no. Largely because we purchased a company called Resonate, who conceptually is just like Silverfort, but the complete opposite. We were born to go into legacy systems, do something about them,
right,
whereas they just said forget that.
We've got some
on the ground up like
that. Yeah, in the banking world, we have some legacy that's down, and we don't.
Yeah, we're coming up with creative solutions around that. So, in fact, we just released a solution that will actually observe local logging on those things. That's kind of a preamble to do it. So, the next thing that you have to deal with service accounts, like service accounts in an environment, with the intent that they're machine to machine, right? They're not, you know, him sitting down, logging in with it, and doing a thing, and then logging out with it. It is, I'm going to instantiate this in the app. I'm going to, you know, put it in a fiddle fast. I'm going to put it somewhere, and it's just going to do its thing. We're done. Okay. Those are a mess. I know, like at National City, so I worked there for 8 years. If you get that. The last 3.5 years, I was doing kind of a lot of special projects around identity. So like, I remember Highland On Base. You guys remember that? Like, here's this stack of groups that you have to create at like 4-point font. And then you have to put people in them, and then you have to, you know, like, it's just like huge mess. And there's service counts, right? That they're going to communicate from that stack of Windows servers that represents, you know, elsewhere in the environment. And there was one point, I had issued a contractor developer a service account. They've gone through the formal process. Here it is. Quite by accident, I found out the same developer in a pod the size of this room, or excuse me, a different developer in a pod the size of this room across from him had started using that service account in his brand new application. And I actually confronted the person who it was really awkward. I made it awkward on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did you get these? Where's the post-it note with these credentials on it? You know, I just like, I totally shamed him. Made him go through the process and get his own service. So that kind of stuff, but so much more. A lot of these are clockwork. So they were spun up 5 years before you ever started working there. The application works. You know that you got to audit it. That's just, you know, more of a security audit. How do I protect these things? How do I put a wrapper? And moreover, what's acting like a service account that might not? Boy, I just can't talk today. I'm trying to do the best. What shouldn't be acting like a service account that is? Let's discover that. Again, all of these will become, you know, clear as we start zoomed out and zoom in. Privilege access. The ability to take certain regulatory requirements is really where we started with this and bring MFA into things like domain admin accounts. So cyber insurance, I think, is one of the first to really say, okay, well, you've got your VPN access covered, you've got your web apps covered. What about these domain admin accounts? Can you MFA those? Well, I mean, there's almost no other products on the planet that can do what Silverfort does now to bring that into your domain admin account. So we can actually use this as my example. Say, hey, I want to add MFA to any use of that domain admin account. So you trot it out, you're going to MFA it. We're taking that further, so we just made a release. Well, I should say we started our rollout of a new module that is dedicated just to privilege access accounts. So being able to discover them, tier them, and say, this backup operator is acting this way, the server operator is acting that way. These are people who are crossing tiers or trying to. We're using our domain admin account from local workstations everywhere, being able to put those controls on more quickly. Or there might have been some more details you'd have to go, so making it a lot easier product.
Do failover? How does the failover work in the event of a DR situation? You can't get the internet, start to spam something.
Sorry, submit all questions in writing. Then we save that for the architecture slide because they don't have a visual. That makes sense. But yes, we do have a lot of redundancy in the products, so that if we do have a situation, we can start with fail open. We can work our way backwards through all that. So like 18 months ago, when I showed people that bottom bullet point in the product, they were like, wow, that's really nice to have. Now we have things like sieges, we have other regulatory requirements going, thou shalt prove that you can show me who's authenticating what, where, and when at a moment's notice. That's a little extreme, but that's more or less what they're asking for, right? And we can do that. And that's, again, kind of the iceberg. I know you would talk about Print Nightmare later. Well, I would appreciate that. We think about visibility. Every prospect, every customer that I talk to, we show them things about their environment they had no idea about. A lot of insights into the firewall side of the house. Like Eli, you mentioned Palo Alto, I think, earlier.
Yep.
Are you guys a customer there?
No, not good.
Okay.
I work with them.
Like folks like them have taken, like the next generation firewall concept to the extreme, where I can just sit down and go, here's Matt, here's his traffic. He spends 3 hours a day on LinkedIn. He's probably looking for a job, whatever that is. I can tear that network traffic apart on the endpoint side of the house. I know even like I worked at Sophos for years. Near the end of my years there, if you ran a piece of malware, it would stop it, and then it would show you a nice little infographic of everything it touched and everything that touched. So you could actually just click on it, find out more about our executables, DLLs, before all this thing apart. What I ask folks is like, do you have that kind of insight for identity? Premise. Usually, like, not slogging through logs and doing stuff that we were doing 15 years ago. The answer is no. And that's another thing that brings to the table. So that's my one sales slide. Sales. This is the one I like because we start to get a little bit deeper into the ways about how we're doing what we do. So across the top there, pretty intuitively, you've got users, you've got service accounts. They're generating authentications across the middle on all kinds of different protocols. Or, as we like to say, stuff in the environment. It could be an application, a storage mechanism. It could be just the fact they're logging their those authentications. And that goes against what we call your identity infrastructure. It's that collection of identity providers that we can sink our teeth into at Silverfort. We do sink our teeth into those. What we start doing is looking at every single authentication. When we look at that authentication, we look at different facets of it. Who's generating? What are they generating for? Their source and destination. The risk level of that user at the moment. And what we're looking to do is say, is this actionable or not? Do I have a policy or another reason to upon this in some way. If not, just let it flow on through as usual. If so, let's do something about it. So the do something about it actually falls into four categories. First one I've talked about a little bit already. What we'll do is leverage your existing MFA provider. It's already been deployed to your users, and be able to say, I'm going to light up their pocket, approve or deny, number matching, something like that, depending on what those vendors support. Hey, plug in your YubiKey, whatever it might be. I'm going to ask them for that second factor. So what Silverfort's doing is saying, hey, this met all the criteria of an authentication. I want to pause for a second. I'm going to go ahead and prompt him. Tim's going to, see his device. He's going to hit approve. We're going to let go of that authentication. So everything goes on normally after. So that pause, it's just within the Kerberos 30-second timeout. It's default, and it's just like their usual experience. So if they're logging into 365 or some other area where they get prompted, as usual, with Microsoft Authenticator, now they're just going to get it for that on-premise application. That they're used to. And having done mobile control at Simples for I know a lot of times that's the hardest part. I mean, I'm also married to a doctor, so the long-standing joke in our household is if it has electricity running through it, she can break it. So I understand the challenges in terms of the end user experience. So you leverage what you got. One of the cool things there, though, that's kind of a side benefit is I see people going, particularly for the last 2 years, from Duo to Microsoft, because they're already paying for Microsoft. Duo just didn't have enough use cases to keep. But there's a few that they can't just accomplish with Microsoft, so they come to us. We can put both of those in there. So wherever the user is in their enrollment journey, they're still on Duo, they're moving to Microsoft, if they dump Duo, they go to Microsoft, both light up the same way, same process that they're doing. They both light up.
Duo's faster.
Duo is way faster. Microsoft is it is the dinosaur. But they still have they'll still give you a phone call.
I completed a Duo before Microsoft had even arrived at my phone.
Mail. Oh, there's my phone. So what's the second to do something about it? I'm going to start with the authentication firewall concept. Let me just put a question out there. Is it normal for your receptionist to RDP to backend servers? Nope. That's kind of why not preclude that situation in your environment? Okay. Let's just go ahead and put all the receptionists in the group. Say thou shalt not RDP to these servers. You just can't. Somebody sits down, gets a privilege escalation at their machine, it's outside the four walls of the company, and they still can't RDP to any of the servers because Silverfort's in the middle. You guys do web content filtering?
Yeah.
It says had like maybe 3 people over the last year say no. You let people get to gambling sites?
Nope.
Yeah, so here we have the exact same concept. What if we took that and just moved it over to the identity space, where we're not allowing access, certain protocols for certain users, just like we would content category or web traffic. What about vendor access? Do you guys have that? Somebody coming in to support? Yeah. Some heads nodding.
Once a year.
Once a year, yeah. That's another common use case for that authentication firewall dynamic. It's us being able to go, hey, here's your 3 servers. You got your VPN access, you got your 3 servers, that's it. But we don't care what happens with your account that we're furnishing with you beyond that. We do care. You can't authenticate according to Silverfort beyond those. Tragic.
That's the part, one of the many parts, but that's the biggest part that I thought was really appealing is that when you think about security in the broad use of a nefarious action, what do the bad guys do? They get onto a network using some kind of credentials. And the first thing they want to do is either elevate those credentials or go laterally in an effort to elevate those, right? If I have got Silverfort in there and I say, okay, I don't give a crap what authentication or what account you have access to, whether that's a user account, an administrative account, or a service account. If you're not using it the way I've said you could use it, you may have the appropriate username and the appropriate password, but you still can't use it. That's monstrously.
So question, are you eliminating basically residual from, so an account that at some point was privileged and then it was taken away, but really AD doesn't take it away, it still sits there. So are you eliminating that risk?
Yeah, we're not actually at this point affecting Active Directory at all. We're watching the authentication system and control and making our own decision criteria. So actually one of the concepts there is being able to see the privilege account through a scrape of Active Directory. And then how do we want to treat that? If that makes sense. I'll give you an absolutely ridiculous example. About the middle of last year, we did an evaluation of the product with a 1,700 user work. And one of the things that we do, we take them through various different elements of that. Like, what did we discover? Let's make a story here. We came into one portion of the product, and it shows you kind of the health and hygiene of Active Directory. 55 domain admins.
Holy moly.
I worked at National City. We had about 60,000 people amongst all our divisions. We had 6 different applicants. Yeah, one for every 10,000. I immediately heard my primary contact. I could almost hear his head going back and forth. And the sing-songy, like, yeah, we got to clean that up. I inherited that. That's a big mess. And then he explained to me what was going on. And my first thought was, okay, you can't just walk those rights away with us. You just described. But you know what we can do? A lot of those people need their godlike rights over just a very narrow band of things. So like tomorrow, you can set up that band around them, which is preemptively talking about service account too right now. But you can do it with humans to say, there's your set of servers, and that's your playground with that godlike rights. Domain admin account, you get that. Until we can say, here's our new group that we created, provision out security for it, we put you in it, hold the domain admin, lather, rinse, repeat. We'll give you the insights to be able to perform that task as well. What are they actually authenticated to? An insight will come up more. We think about privilege access security up until really just this week. A lot of that was adding MFA to admin accounts, being able to limit them. I've even seen a few people where they will set up a policy that denies all access, all authentication for domain admin accounts specifically. They will have to come into Silverfort, turn it on, then they'll be able to use that account. Then they'll go back and turn it off. It's a fairly inelegant way to do it. That's why we released that update. Now we have a portal, put in your reason why. We're starting to step on the toes of some other products in the industry. Because we're seeing every authentication off those identity providers in that identity infrastructure list, we're going to identify what's behaving like a service account based on its authentication behavior. Just try as you may, you're not going to act like a service account. Oh, hey, like you're going to be inaccurate. Sorry, try to get that every 5 minutes. It's not the service account will do it every 5 minutes. It's got a timer. Do it every hour. It'll start at the same server. It'll go to the same servers. It'll generate about the same amount of authentication traffic. I've just given you quite a few of the models that we look for. There's like a whole stack more that are secret sauce that Israeli friends won't tell me about. So that's layer one. So it's like, why is Tim's account acting like a service account? Let me give you my favorite example of recent. So end of the year, I'm doing a POC, very large governmental organization in Florida, and I have a primary contact. I talk most to him, but I've talked to some of his team, and they're all in one big room. They're on site, and we go through the service account stuff that we'll look at here in a minute. And in one of those lists, we identify humans acting like service accounts. The second one down was the guy who sat next to me, and in no small quantity. I mean, like really busy service account going on there. And so I literally hear him, like his voice trail off. He's clearly moved away from his desk, and I'm mumbling in the background. And he comes back and he tells me the story. The guy used his own account to build a dashboard to run the monitors, for their monitor. So it goes out, it grabs data, it does its thing, it shows on the screen. They keep track of, PC's getting unhealthy, something's filling up, whatever. But it's his account. So they just got a new sheriff at the turn of the year. He is tornado in that area. So, like he's actually having influence on their IT department and how they serve the county, all of that.
In an old life, I worked for another bar. I went into a medium-sized customer here in the Columbus area. I won't say their name. And I was trying to do some pretty high-level VMware work, including actually install vCenter and do some things there, and then Veeam and just a lot of interconnected type. And their domain admin accounts didn't work. Like they were so jacked up, they had no idea. Everything just ran, so they didn't mess with anything. So in order to get my job done, I actually used the only domain admin level account they had, which was their Veeam user, to do all the work I needed to do. And then I went back in and helped them with their actual domain admin setup stuff. But this is in reverse, right? Where folks actually are leveraging service accounts in ways that they're not supposed to use them, which is what I did, but I had to, or that was the only hoop I could jump through to get around. But you don't want people to do that. Yeah. Service accounts are supposed to do what they're supposed to do, and that is all.
Yeah, like when we discover things, I have a nice little animation, say ooh and ah. What we start doing immediately is building a bubble. Yeah, we missed it. Building a animation around them. Building a policy around each discovered service account. So, the fact that it is authenticating from here to there every 5 minutes, so on and so forth, all brings up the analytics. Well, let's go ahead and use that to create a policy around it, just like the bubble around the robot, to say, this is your playground. And we talked about the vendor access earlier. We're automatically doing that for service accounts. And it is the behavior of what's going on that account. So whether you agree with it or not, that's another story completely. But it is what it's doing. My perfect example of that, and this was a kind of comical situation. So I'm taking a customer through this on behalf of our customer success team. And, we get in there and they pick a test dev service account as kind of their first safe example to turn on. And, so then they're going to test out the veracity of our statements. So like try to log in with it from a laptop and just abuse it and see what's on the board. But as we looked at it, we did the story again when it makes more sense in front of the product. The list of destinations included 2 production SQL servers, test dev service account, production SQL servers. 1 or 2 touches, I probably wouldn't jump out of my skin. Some kind of like just making sure you're there, buddy. Whatever. No, over 2,000 authentications. So they had to be, just kind of like my service account story and confronting the developer. They literally said, "We're gonna have to call you back. When can we talk again?" And we said, the call lasted about 3 more minutes. They went and talked to someone. To them, this is a huge, serious violation to abuse that account. So we discover those kind of things all the time. And there's more. Fix that.
Are these predefined rules, or do you like
Yes.
identified?
Yeah, we're in a monitor mode. It won't even show anything for like 24 hours. Just blank slates. And then for that, here's my suggestion or initial. But I will tell folks, leave it at least 3 or 4 weeks. What you'll watch is they'll actually shuffle around the categories as they behave differently. We catch more. And there's other service accounts that just they do something once a month, end of the month kind of things. Last but not least is visibility. And again, being able to see every authentication from every one of those platforms in one place, filter it by user, filter it by different dynamics, and then also just be able to prove to different folks that the user is behaving this way or not. is huge. I'll just finish building this out. So a lot of integrations. So we hired a bunch of folks for our integrations team this year, and so they're going crazy this year. We built dashboards for like Splunk, the ability to just easily connect into a lot of these others. Feed them data, pull data.
You got CrowdStrike up on that chart. We've been talking to CrowdStrike about the next gen SIM,
Okay.
and they don't have anything for Silverfort. Like we mentioned Silverfort, they didn't even know who you were.
Yeah, that might just be your account team.
They don't have a data ingest parser specifically for Silverfort because they have their own
Yeah.
product kind of that competes with Silverfort.
Yeah, they have.
I'm not actually.
API then.
Yeah,
Their identity component,
Yeah.
separate line.
it's probably not as good. It is very specific. The CrowdStrike authentication ID capabilities are awesome, but what they can do is very limited.
Yeah.
You'd have
Where
to buy
they
in
can-
almost into the entire suite.
The whole
Yeah.
stack, yeah.
And it only works where their
Yeah.
agent will go.
Yeah, so like they have a specific architecture. If you buy into all of it, it's great. It's
Right.
gonna work all together. But if you have multiple pieces, it gets shaky.
Quite a few CrowdStrike.
Yeah,
On their
I installed their agent to do the ED identity stuff, and the next day they took down half the internet. So, yeah,
was that
yeah, it was the next day. 'Cause that was a Friday, right? I installed it on Thursday to let the agent run and collect all the AD info, and then had alerts from that one server, that domain controller, and put the agent on, and it went offline. But it did come back. It didn't blue screen like
Okay.
a lot of
Good.
people's did. But yeah, it crashed my stuff. So I was like, and they still call me, and I haven't picked up the phone for the guy. Like, yeah, it's like I told him
after the fact because I figured like
it'll be better. Yeah,
it's not only will be better. It's like think about it. They literally
Yeah.
the biggest whale in the market. They cause the biggest outage, so they're that good at least. We know that now.
Yeah.
So then
It's a
kick
hard.
them
It's a
down, get a
People
good
making
deal.
that decision.
They need to change the name because I can't sell that name to my
I was like, we can get a good
decision
deal. They're like,
makers.
no,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
happening.
They hear that name and run away. So
When
sorry.
no, that's it. Yeah, we do see them often, and right now, if you have CrowdStrike Identity and us, it's kind of like the two chipmunks in the doorway. They're gathering data mechanism and ours. So just got stuff.
So once you plug it in, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Once you plug it in, you get telemetry on every account where it's logging in, what it's doing. And based on that, you're giving basically every account almost like you could, yeah. This is your putting guardrails. It's
Yeah.
pretty complete. That's it.
And it automatically, based on the built-in stuff, it does classification of a few different things. Like if it's acting like a service account, it's going to say it's a service account.
I got
That doesn't-
dashboard and go so we can see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to give you, those 4 categories of things that I had across the bottom. I'm going to just kind of go through each of those right now. Just kind of show you action. When I'm at trade shows, when I get really tired of talking to the 10,000th person, like, I get into RSA. California, no. I mean, like the Columbus Convention Center, like double that, and then that's security vendors. There's all kinds of names you never heard of, and including us, I'm sure for a lot of people. But just the number of people that are there, it's just astonishing. But I get tired, and so once in a while I'll be like, "Hey, how would you add MFA to a PowerShell?" They usually look at me like you're looking at me. This guy's lost it. He needs some caffeine or something. I can keep this on top of you. That's what we're going to do here in just a second. So I'm going to pick Microsoft because it's pretty ridiculous. But as you can see on my phone, these are the ones I have set up on my phone. We have a few more to use and things like that. So what are we saying here? We're on this machine here. We're going to reach out to App One. Just ask it some basic questions. But to do that, we have to authenticate the Active Directory. When we authenticate the Active Directory, Silverfort's sitting there going, "Hey, I have a policy that says when Matt and his coworkers do this action, we need to interrupt that. We need to ask them for or let that." So this is probably going to take a minute, just because of where we are. My notification message. See my phone back in front of me here. There's the message evolving, and you can see the PowerShell just sitting. No pause command. There's nothing like that in there. It's going to sit there until I hit it. So I'm going to hit approve before we run out of time, especially because I'm not. And when I hit approve, it lets go of that authentication, and it goes on as normal. So Active Directory processes it. It says you have access to App One. Yes. Go get what you need from it. Go complete your command. If I hit deny, I get all that ugly red text. And that's really kind of the process around anything that we're doing in the environment. Same server, RDP though. So a different kind of connection. Only this time. Let's get Microsoft. This time I'm going to say deny because here we are at launch. I have access for that server. What you'll see is remote desktop connection makes its best guess. The reason I show you that is we give no kind of 404 equivalent message back to
Tell it why.
yeah. I mean, literally, we just dispose of that authentication. It just disappears. So you use in remote or use some other application to connection, you get a different error message every time. One of those different products has something different. It shows. And you're back. So that's one of the examples of different areas. But again, it's hitting Active Directory. You can add MFA to it. So let's actually look at product two. Yes, we MFA our own products. That's our little desktop client. That's not required, but show messages, prompt you for your UB keys, do a lot of things with that.
Does this look familiar to anyone?
Matrix.
No, if you've ever seen Dark Trace, Dark Trace looks almost exactly like this. Different color scheme, but black and orange.
One of the reasons I
green, yeah.
I think we did this is like a lot of times the marketing department puts out like a 90-inch show, and then people come around the corner.
It's
kind of
pretty
like
freaking cool.
mesmerizing.
It doesn't mean anything, but it looks cool.
Yeah, it's a representation.
Actually, I was gonna say every one of those white dots is an authentication.
It's a representation. I'll tell you, GE is not solid. GE is one of our customers. It would be solid if it was a total representation, just because of the number of things that we had. Just like a major slowdown connect.
To do an upgrade on a server the other day. I had to log in as a service account to do it. I had totally forgotten about Silverfort and I locked down that account.
Nice.
It took me 5 minutes to remember. I need to go into Silverfort and add the machine that I was already paying from to the allow list before I could actually log in. Because it's a generic error. It just says, nope, denied. I'm like, I know this is the right password because I pulled our password database.
That's what's on my sticky note.
I looked at the keyboard. I spent 3 years at Varonis too, and just discover a lot of like password files. As we look through data, and I actually, I have like a nice Logitech keyboard, but I have posted notes with like, usernames and passwords under it, so I hold that up during the presentation. Anyway, so I'm going to use the cyber insurance requirements because that's still kind of the go-to. But I'll just tell you right now, this is an oppressive policy on purpose to illustrate the point. So policies are never fun to show in the demos. A lot of the demo books, they don't do that, but I'm going to give you some ideas here. So what is this thing saying? For all domain admins, coming from any device to any device, I want you to MFA. Not only then, let's go down here to advanced options. Try to scroll down here. Team is. We're going to have you do that MFA all times of the day. So adjust that if we want to. Right now, it's set to every time I use that account. So in other words, every time a Kerberos ticket gets issued for that account, you're going to have to MFA. Connect to a new server. It gets renewed. Connect to another server. Log into a machine. MFA, 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 all the time. You just MFA to a particular server, but you hop on that other laptop, sitting on your desk, go into the same server. Guess what? You change your source. Make sure there's no piggybacking and weird stuff. You're gonna have to MFA again. I want to rename this particular policy to MFA fatigue. It's only a term that we use.
Yeah.
You're not going to talk about it. But that's exactly what it's a recipe for. So to work backwards out of this, like serious policy, we have concepts around things like being able to say, hey, don't worry about MFA or don't like your domain admins every 4 minutes. You do like them maybe every 4 hours. So you get that first gross ticket issued, you MFA, you don't have to worry about the rest of them for that 4 hour period. This allows you to meet those qualifications and all those different regulatory requirements without having to worry about your domain admins generating resumes, which I think would happen probably. And then knowing that when it goes fallow, and you're not using it overnight, you're going to have MFA. So if your phone lights up at 11 p.m., it's not you. Let's look at some of that targeting I talked about. We talked about the receptionist with RDP. We talked about the vendor access, those kind of things. So in a policy, what does that look like? Well, fines. I didn't really register this for I didn't really register this before I worked for Silverfort. So Kerberos is an authentication protocol, service principles. The analogy I make for a lot of folks who aren't familiar with that, TCP/IP, you got ports, same kind of thing. We're connecting to the same thing, but in a different way. So CIFs, like most of us recognize that. Share. So maybe I don't want to affect that, or I do in this policy. I don't want to affect a mapped drive, but I want to keep RDP access out, or I want to MFA that. So I can come down here and say, there's term served for this particular server. I'm going to MFA for this. I'm not going to affect CIFs at all. And that way, you can have different results for different kinds of situations. And so I'm just showing you some details in a policy. With this being kind of a novel technology, like I bet everybody would have to talk through nuances of the vendor that you're working through to conceptually understand what you're doing. Finding an authentication firewall rule. Well, what does that look like? What's that?
Pretty nightmare.
Yes, it's me too. Yeah, you love that. Every time I log in, somebody undid. So we could have that demo now. It's just well enough. Some tutorial. That is quite a bit.
First started, our walls were filled with those NT authority.
So, long story short, what we're looking at is the base of the pyramid. Think about a product, like firewall is going to look at network traffic. If it can't look at network traffic, it's not going to be able to do anything above that. We're looking at all of those authentications. It's filtered to me, but I share this with about 25 or 30 other people. All generating stuff, service accounts generating stuff. We've got to create many different filters. One of the guys at GM, I think, put it best. You can find the needle in the stack of needles that you're looking for. They're all the same. And put those together, save for later, so on. We'll come back around to this, thinking about visibility. But look, I've got a create policy button. What this does is for that particular authentication, takes us back to that policy page. There's all the painting by numbers. And now we have a good start policy to say, for this guinea pig fellow right here, starting at these locations, this is a horrible destination. Just pick one. That could be that App One server or what have you. I'm going to go ahead and MFA. And now I put this policy in. the next time that action happens, MFA will happen as well for that one person and that one server to that server.
On that one
Yeah,
segment of the protocol.
exactly. So extremely detailed. I find there's still a lot of fear when we have conversations. People, like, okay, I put in Silverfort and I have to MFA everything now. Quite the opposite. It's 100% the opposite. Unless you give it something specific to do. Do it. In fact, we'll put our products sometimes in large environments and just let it sit. Say, hey, this is what we can tell you about it. That's how we'll create a policy. And I do this in evaluations every day. Our customer success team, this is their go-to methodology. But what it means is, after kind of your initial engagement as a customer with us, you can do it really easily. You have that, oh yeah, moment, I want to do something about that. Maybe that's even one. Okay, this is not a situation I agree with. Just gonna turn it off. As a slow one.
Regular users can't log into SQL Server.
Yeah. There you go.
All of the day.
It reminds me of back when we first put in WebSense, Ohio. That would have been so awesome to have had a create policy off of this process. Because the way we had to do it is we would see it in the logs. This is something I don't want to happen. So you had to write it all down or screen cap or whatever, and then jump into the management console and create a rule based on that. But yeah, that would have been really cool to be able to just hit a button, say create policy, and then you could change it to, instead of just that user doing that, you can say, well, I don't want this for anybody.
Yeah.
Turn that off or on. Sometimes we had places that were specific IP. They weren't DNS names, they were just IPs. So we had to allow specific traffic to an IP. Well, WebSense didn't do anything on IP. Like, they were completely ignorant. Everything had to be DNS based. So we would have to go in and do it manually to set that all up. I don't know how it does it now, but back then that's the way you had to do it. But yeah, it's because everything they do is based on categorization. And the only categorization they do is by DNS name. So you could do stuff by IP, but you had to manually do it.
So going back to that slide, service accounts. That's what this page is. So blank for about 24 to 48 hours as it looks at that stream of data to make assessments. And then it starts populating this list. So if you're on this list, you're in some way acting like a service account. Maybe it's your sources and destinations alone, since some weird things with that. Maybe it's a combination of things. It usually is. So once you land here, though, we're building that little bubble around the robot service account. It looks like this. So here's all the sources this account has been used, the destinations it's gone to, protocols it's been used with, and we've built this policy. So here's your policy, action items just below the fold there. So what are we saying? Give us about 3 weeks and then be able to come in here and put eyes to it. These little allow sliders will be pre-populated for you, suggesting, hey, these are likely candidates for something that's going to consistently use. You're free to disagree with that, of course. Kind of like my SQL Server issue, that's exactly what happened. Test dev account up here, SQL servers, production SQL servers are appearing on this list. Cringe, to quote the Suns. And so with that, go ahead and turn it on, disable any protocols you don't think it's going to use, put it in deny access. And just like that policy we created for MFA a second ago, we're founding this based on the behavior of what's already going on in the environment. So you can turn that on with a lot of confidence to know that it's not going to persist. Rotation has been kind of a way that people have tried to handle service accounts historically. But when I worked in this, for every particular data store that you connected to, there was a spot to put in a username and a password. It's a service account to have privilege to reach out to them. And then, I think about some of my really large customers. One of them had like 120 different data stores they connected to. And then they tried to do password rotation. And it was like a day-long project because it was like, change it here, close that out, let it save
On a weekend or a holiday.
They would just continue on. Eventually, like they got wise and they had a SQL script that would just feed it. Yes. Great alerts. But it's kind of those potential breakages that I see with password rotation regularly. Where is it being used? Where should it be? Where is it being used that I don't know about? And of course, that's troubleshoot. So with this wrapper around it, you're not going any further. So if it's not on this list, you can't get there. If it's not on this list, you can't start there. So interactive logins go away. Try as somebody may. Their laptop's not here, the desktop, whatever. Start here. You've got the wisdom to know that this account's being used on this box. Go anywhere else than here, fail again. So it really does cloister those accounts rather quickly. So layers of discovery. It's acting like a service account. What is it actually touching? Let's delve a little deeper. I'm going to pick this one that's a little more interesting. So we have these investigation pages that give us more data about really any entity in Active Directory. Name, metadata, group membership. How are you acting like a service account? Guess what? There's one set of authentications consistently. There's another consistently. Humans don't act like that. And you can just scroll through what it's actually being used with. And I find this is the insight people lack about pre-existing service accounts. Like you come into the organization, they've been there longer than you. How are they actually being used? Do they have domain admin? I want to get rid of that. So this will give you what is it actually authenticating to? Then I can determine beyond that what level I want to give it.
And if it was set to deny or allow based on a policy that you put in, it would have that policy name in there.
Yes. Yeah. So and throughout you can actually see our policy statement. Again, our logging, others like that. It's always a question. When Silverfort does something, can I see it? Absolutely. Even though we're disposing of an authentication, maybe you can see that. One thing I haven't covered yet, and we'll cover this more deeply here in a minute, but while we're here, for this particular service account, we've assessed its risk level as high. Why is that? There's a couple of combinations of things that Silverfort puts together in a weighted measure back in to say, your risk level is this. Most of your users will just be one. But you'll see a few that just sit around this because, well, it's a domain admin. Got an old password, that doesn't help. It's there, but most it's a combination of domain admin and a suspected negative behavior going on. So there's a whole ITDR practice built into the product, identity threat detection response to tease that out. And so we have suspected and known threat behavior going on with the account. So if you see something privileged, exhibit that behavior, it's kind of and we can have an automated response to that. Where does Silverfort live? We're just dipping our toes into cloud hosting. So 2 customers on it right now. Probably have 20 total. Right now, it's just been at the discretion of our script success team on if they're a good fit. Right now, it lags a little bit under our premise. That'll change probably. Dominance, what you're seeing here is find a lot of folks want us close to them. So
It's a virtual appliance.
Two categories. I'll cover that.
2 times.
It makes sense.
So categories of service accounts I mentioned earlier. So here's our hybrid category. My favorite description for this is the awkward conversation generator. Because you need more. You need more awkward conversations. I love them. So this is my boss's boss's boss. Tell me, Chad, why do you have 46 sources and 36 destinations? I'll see him in a couple of weeks. I'll ask him, like, what did you do? So
Trying to break the product.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure he's just, he's so, but why is he here? because everybody on this list is acting like a human and a service account. I asked folks to put the product in, let it sit, take a look at this. Inevitably, you'll see 2 or 3 service accounts, and that's because they're being used like a human. Just to use a safe example, nurse pulls out the service account that she's been given to do the one thing on Friday afternoon to run the report. She does it. She logs off, logs in, came in herself. Like, catch that. I've seen that one 2 or 3 times. Specific example. This is your time, though, to say, hey, I've had a conversation with them. They are not a service account, and so we're going to say it's not. Maybe it is a service account. Smack somebody's hand and say, stop using it interactively. It now shifts over to the machine area. But typically, this is an area that won't drain out. If you see something pop in later, it's probably because somebody put their account in the scripts or the scheduled task or the app. Like my example earlier. Okay. What about those accounts that need to touch a lot of stuff? Maybe everything. This is our CVE scanner. So I'm sure I have something like that. Utility or software deployment. It's going to start somewhere. So basically, in our case, like a server that is on the top, and it's going to reach out to quite literally everything. So if I scroll down, and you're basically going to see the object of the directory is the sheet. Just populate to the bottom. So what are we doing here? Earlier you saw we narrowed it down to just certain sources and destinations. Well, we could just say selected sources at all destinations, knowing that this thing is going to want to touch attached printers. It's going to want to touch everything it can possibly get to find vulnerabilities, right? But the kid in tier 3 who abuses this account because it's got more privileges than he does, guess what? He can't use it anymore because you have to start at the server where it starts. It's where the scanner is running. You have to start there. So even with one-sided policy, giving a lot of power controlling that account. All right, this is a confessional moment. Who's ever right-clicked an account, chosen disabled, and waited for the phone?
Disable it and wait till somebody screams.
Yeah, exactly.
Silverfort.
Yeah. Most awkward situation in National City was owner showing up on my desk. Did you disable this account? Open floor too. So it was very. Yeah, I did. It's nice to meet you. But
Now it's
We
gone.
Yeah. Let's just disable non-delete.
yeah. Oh, so that's what this is really good for a year from now. So you put in Silverfort tomorrow, get it all trained up, get our policies in. Dormant is going to be machine, any of those other categories, flop over to the dormant category where you got all view saves. So it's a strong attestation that I can go and get rid of that thing. Good bottles. Initially, though, I almost kind of wish this category would rename itself at the time. But we think it's a service account, but we don't have any behavior to back that. There's nothing suspicious. This is something that says it's a service account. And I do find it comical. I've noticed it more and more, especially some of my longer term evaluations. This number will drop and this number will drop. So it's 3 or 4 weeks, all of a sudden this is dropped by 9. This is gone up by 9 precisely. So, slice and dice other areas too, like service accounts that are going to make admins. So you get a report of those concepts with just service accounts. Speaking of which, so let me pause here.
19 domain.
Oh, just wait. Just wait. You're gonna laugh.
That's your limit.
You're gonna really laugh.
That's a criminal.
I hope you laugh. I laugh every time I do.
Everybody's a
users do they
domain
have?
admin.
You're gonna laugh, like I said, in just a minute. But before I move away from like the concept around service accounts, do you guys have any questions around that before we go into kind of visibility category?
The only thing that, maybe drill in just a little bit more is the notification side. Once you've changed it to deny or report, I don't know if you guys saw it, but in the bottom left there, when you changed the design of what's supposed to happen on the action, you can not only deny it, but you can also notify on it, right? So that's for a lot of the security people in house. A lot of times the notification is every bit as important as the deny, right? Because now I have the source, I have something to work off of and saying, hey, I need to watch differently, not watch more, but I need to watch differently because someone tried to do something or something tried to do something that I told it couldn't. And that can be the easy way to get into solving the problem quickly, right? I think there's a big misnomer in a lot of organizations that as long as it's denied, I don't have to worry about it. Most of the time, if it's denied and you're notified, you have to worry a lot more because that means somebody's trying to do something they're not supposed to do, and you need to be aware of it. So,
Yeah, that is in fact when I do an evaluation. That's one of the things I take folks through is the categories of why the IDP, like Active Directory, denied it. Is it a bad password? Is it a locked account? Is it, like, let's slice and dice that. Is it a bad server connection they're making? All of those have different implications, right? Like, why are we still authenticating from a lock? Safer account. You know what I'm
So
saying?
your point, if I choose to get an email notification of every denied, I'm okay. I want to see it. Why is it denied?
Depending on your users and your environment, that might make you actually great.
he may have
So
a
are
few.
you able to then, like, so again,
Yeah.
put criteria around that, right? For
Yeah.
when you want to get the notification, recognizing that it is something that you do have to pay attention to versus
Yeah.
something,
Yeah, I think
right?
10
Can
years
you do
ago,
that?
one of my coworkers put it really well. That's a great way to fill an inbox.
Yep.
But that's what you want to do. But I think a lot of folks are doing like the send to SIM. We just got direct email out of the products. With other ways to get it there. I also know there's a few that will, instead of doing that, it's like this notify right here. Go back to our logs. You'll see Silverfort action as a category. When we put notify there, it stamps that authentication, something of concern. Then they get that solely as a report on a regular basis. So then you can put eyes to it at your leisure instead of just feeling like it's like Tim said, it's already doing something. So we're doing something part. Maybe we have a misconfiguration somewhere in some report that's making it generate all these, or there's something out there that's we're interfering with on purpose. To
Do you have the ability to edit the message that they receive?
not at this point. I'm sure we will at some point.
It would be nice to flip them off.
No, well, like.
You did a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, now for this perspective, like the help desk gets all of it.
Yes.
But if with something like this, we would want them to we wouldn't necessarily want them to reach out to IT, they reach out to us. So it'd be good to be able to.
There's some control over the MFA phones.
Yeah.
Depending on which vendor.
Yeah.
My authenticator, it's not from Microsoft, but Duo, you can put in.
Yeah.
Like from this server to this server. Are you wanting to approve this?
I think Duo and us, which I haven't really covered, but like we have our own infrastructure, so we're not in a limited quantity. Just not going to dive into do MFA in Microsoft stuff. Because there's and that you can just do that. So, here's your opportunity to laugh. So we've gone to the insights page. Gardner would call this the identity security posture management portion of the product. And that like all the way across the slide. Yeah, I did like that's a lot of syllables. So I like insights. It's not up there, then it is over here. Yeah. Anybody want to laugh on what I have highlighted, please? Somebody laugh. If you don't know why that's funny, then
Yeah, they don't.
You got
Yeah.
three more. down there.
Everybody's domain.
yeah, it just we have like 400 entities in the environment. Some total anything that's out.
Not only that, you just increase it for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got 3 new guys. So yeah,
Well, I
that
mean,
right there.
it is humorous, but
Yeah.
it is kind of your business. So
Well,
it,
Let me take
Does
the
make a
humor.
little bit of sense.
Let me take the humor into a really high gravity situation I came across last year. So, you guys familiar with the concept of a shadow admin? So in Active Directory, you can give an object administrative privilege over another object, and there's no group involved. And classically, we audit on the group, right? You're in a domain admin group or not. So what we do is a scrape of Active Directory, recurse that whole thing, put it all together in one report. I found folks just love this. I know I would have years ago. So you can just run this as a report, just have an output. But let me give you my favorite example from last year. So this is actually my coworker Chris's wife. I don't know why she has an account here, but whatever. She doesn't work here. I think she's a nurse. I don't know. But what are we saying here? So user Natasha has reset password over this server. Here's my favorite example from last year. We'll see if you guys get the gravity of this situation. So I come in here and, kind of like our comical admins, really high count. It's hard to see right now, but 376 users total in this environment. When I came into this particular environment, it said 376. Number of shadow admins equals number of users. And I'm like, oh no, the product is broken. Something is totally misconfigured. Not my first thought. Like, I gotta know. Let's open it. And so sure enough, we start scrolling and it is every identity. And I'm like, well, just open one form. Well, you just do what I just did here. And there's only 2 permissions on every one of these. And it says group domain users as the following permission domain replication. This is where I want to enter, just inject, yes, updates, even on this is where I want to just inject like a picture of Oprah going, you get a copy of the domain, you get a copy of the domain, you get a copy of the domain. And it took us literally 2 hours worth of meetings with them before they confessed that a threat actor had been in their environment about 9 weeks before we ever got there. And they thought they had everything kicked out. They did all kinds of things about
So they were still in breach.
And well, not that we could tell in any other way in the product. Like threat models were tweaked during the evaluation, any of things like that. But this was a leftover that if like anybody had not changed their password and they had cracked that password with their copy of the domain, they could come back into the VPN at a convenient time for that and get another copy of the domain, right? And they had no idea this was going on. Two such privileges set up. So, the Active Directory hygiene piece, I think, we all know it's important. This is going to give you a lot of good insights.
Well, and that's a great segue into another topic that people need to think hard about is when you've been breached, the resolution of that breach, what people consider the resolution of a breach dramatically differs, right? Did I shut the bad guy down? Did I stop the exfiltration of data? Did I do this? Did I do that? Is this kind of forensics done in most of those post-breach reactionary? No, it's not. So what do the bad guys do that the good guys don't? The bad guys go in and look for a pre-existing breach footprint, and then they leverage that to go forward. We don't do that. The good guys go in and go, oh, we plugged the holes and we stamped out the bugs, and then we move on. So we have to, on the good guy side, we got to start thinking like the bad guys, or they're going to constantly keep feeding us our own lunch. Like that's just reality.
Yeah, a lot of other good metrics. I mean, some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Got an old password or it doesn't expire. Your domain admin count. I'll give you so this is humorous, but so 2023, I was doing an evaluation of a very large organization, 20,000 users, and we started the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It ran, through that, and I just expected to kind of sit fallow and just gather data. Actually, a couple of people used it, but the number one thing the following Tuesday when we came back, we saw was this number had gone up by 27. It's a little too specific. It's seared on my brain. And, so somebody immediately sees that, points it out, click on that, what's going on with that? We go and we scroll through here, and what we find is there's interspersed tier 3 help desk people everywhere. They're trustworthy folk, but like, why are they all in there? Somebody basically just figured out the tier 3 group, dropped them into main admins to handle like some kind of fire sale situation that happened while so many people were at home. They wouldn't specify what that was to me, but nobody ever took them back out again on Monday when the whole situation was over. What got me was in the group of people that I was presenting to, not everybody knew that had happened. Right? Nobody's checking on any trying to change the Active Directory at a high level. Somebody wants me to click on it because they don't believe it. So, that's what this is here for. I think our distinguished guest from Puerto Rico can talk about Print Nightmare a little bit. Some of the things we discovered. Well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to skip over here and then I'll come back to that here in a second. So, Gardner would call this identity threat detection. The and response actually happens in our policies. So we see that escalation like critical or high for a user. We can go ahead and say, when that happens, let's go ahead and have this response. So you've hit critical. These are the keys to my kingdom. Like you're sequestering your sensitive data right now. Maybe we say you don't authenticate to those data switch. So that's resolved. Strong investigation tools, a lot of different threat models that are mostly identity focused, a little bit of attack surface management. Imagine we'll see some of these things like flip pages over time in the next year. But let's go back on here. Kind of transitioning a little bit into visibility. If you guys aren't familiar, back in 21, there was a situation in which the print spooler was being abused to generate network traffic on behalf of Microsoft released a patch that basically turned anything that the print spooler tried to generate in that regard fashion into junk that will hit the domain controller. And that's where most people stopped. You just had automatic patching turned on, just went out to all your machines, the threat went away, and it's short. But what you didn't know is that every time that print spooler wakes up at odd moments of the night, it generates this junk authentication. And it's so junk that the domain controller goes, I'm not even going to process you. I'm not going to log you. And you're nonsense. But it has to say you're nonsense. The analogy I make is, we had an election year. I care about your political leanings, but I do care about what happens in your mailbox. Undoubtedly, you probably got about 2 pounds worth of extra mail over the course of the last year. And you went, you probably didn't look at it and go, I'm going to vote for this person. It's just like, get it out of here.
That's your bridge.
Right next to my kid's picture.
Yep.
Going, Yeah. So, that's exactly what the domain controller is doing. It's like, I'm not even take this in the house. It's just going to go right in the trash can. So
It was even worse than that. It was probably every 1 valid authentication, you have 10 invalid authentications. Without the registry key, it would just keep spewing this stuff out. And we noticed the load on our domain controllers was up, but it wasn't enough in our environment anyway that it was adversely impacting the end users. It was just causing some more load, so we added some more resources and thought everything was good. And we brought Silverfort in. And the first site we installed to, the logs were just nothing but that KRB GT from NT Authority, the one that you had in there earlier. And you only had like 10 in here.
Well,
We had page upon page, like that NT Authority KRB GT. And it just was mind-numbing. So we put the registry key out to everywhere.
give you guys some examples of filtering. So risk indicator, nightmare fix artifact is the proper term for it. But yeah, you'll see this, it starts somewhere and then it tries to get the domain as NT authority. Sounds really familiar from like if you've ever had like an NT core, CSE, NT authority.
The more printers you have installed, the more it spews those things out. So if somebody had 20 printers installed, every time it touches that print queue, it sends one of these things out.
and, you know, so is this a security threat? No. Is this an infrastructure threat? I've seen one domain controller drop, the guy
It's
told
turned
me
into a denial of service.
it was like 37% reduction of utilization on the domain. That's what he told me. This is this. I was like, okay, well, that's electricity, that's time, that's overhead, that's CPUs, that's memory, stuff back in your pocket. That's just, that's like one example of those kind of things that we discover with this. And we do it kind of like multi-factor. So what we're looking at over here is the actual machines that are offended. Small list in this case of those, but you know, how much traffic are they generating out of the sum total? Go over to our logs. Let's go ahead and clear all of our filters. About 1.3 million authentications. You know, and then we go back and we filter that. Let's see, you know, kind of a guesstimate of how much of that traffic is there. So 100,000. So you can reduce your footprint in that regard. Other areas that you can take folks through. Let's see. The results, we'll say denied. So there's the sum total. So 131,000 out of a million. For some reason, always going to have some. Right?
So 131,000 denied, 100,000 of those are
Yes. Yeah. And then we go in here and like just let's call those out, right? Just indicator. Clear. Say exclude. Get those guys out of here. Now we'll see
30,000.
Yeah, so there's 30,000. Why? Deny reason. Let's say bad password. Just typing it wrong or you cached it somewhere wrong. So we got 18,000 instances of a bad password. Probably not, you know, domain controller's not choking them. But what does that mean for what's over here? So I can tell you this from experience, when I see a machine, you know, that has this dollar sign, nobody is actively logged into that machine right now. There's something on that machine that's forcing it to authenticate to the domain. It probably doesn't have a good password. And that means that password is probably stored there somewhere in clear text that I can go get. So you can, just by looking at this, go, I have threats that I can eliminate in the environment. I have threat opportunities where I can avoid somebody being able to leverage those just by taking a look at these logs. So I jokingly, you know, call this like the story that's being written of authentication in your environment, because it's, you know, here's all your usernames, all their sources, all their destinations, how they connected, what happened with it. So you can supply that to anybody at any time. As a complete side note, any of these areas in the product, we have role-based access control. So you can just turn them off. You want your tier 3 people to have access to this to troubleshoot for lower tiers. And hey, this executive user keeps getting locked out. Lots of time. You can say, I would say that really easy. Really quick. Usually get to the bottom of those kind of things, but I remember some things about it. You guys have been my customer, I think, 3 times. So, anyways, yeah,
So
Yeah, one of the big things for that we use when we have to change our domain admin accounts, RDP to servers, and you got disconnected instead of logging out. Suddenly change your domain admin account password, you start getting locked out. You go into logs here and you find everywhere you're logged in that's trying to authenticate you. Go back, reconnect to that machine, refresh the password. But yeah, before that it was painful. Change your domain admin account password, which we do every 90 days.
yeah.
So do you want to talk about the POC thought process, how it rolls out, what's required on the?
Yeah.
So all of that for $19.99 a month.
User, I don't know. Yeah. So that's actually a really good point. I'm the sales engineer. I mean, they don't even let us get reimbursed for stuff. So, you know, they don't let us handle money. We are, so I will say, like, when we think about like pricing, these are the guys to talk to. They're our partner. But we have the everything burrito licensing. It's not really called that. It's the sales engineer called it. But it's all the things that you just saw for a user.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah,
That's good.
really so.
That should be in marketing.
We'll change the description in the quote to everything burrito.
Yeah.
It's gotta come from Silverfort.
Yeah.
Is it, is pricing based per user
Yeah,
or
it is.
Per
Yes,
user,
is there
per
a
month.
minimum user count, I assume?
I have not heard
I
that.
think that's,
Tiered. It's
It's tiered on the
Okay.
pricing, but I don't
Okay.
think there's a
What's
Per
per
user
user
or
and
per
per
account?
service?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
Yes.
So user service agent as well, isn't it also considered service?
No,
Or
no,
are
no,
they-
no.
Are they tiered
No,
different?
like,
or-
the salespeople say belly buttons. I like kidneys divided by two, but not everybody else.
It's divided by
Very
two.
confusing.
Wow.
Anyways, yeah, it's per human. So if you have 6 accounts. We have one human working for EST.
We
You know,
won't get into that.
I've heard it before. Yeah, we do have, like, you know, if you just want to do a little MFA and a lot of service accounts or vice versa, you know, like, we have different, you can just, okay, cherry pick it. Yeah. These guys. Yes, sir.
What if the human has more than one personality?
Well, each of those.
They still only
personalities
have
probably
one belly button.
yeah,
too.
one belly button.
Yeah,
Come on, Todd.
it might. I'm taking those balance out. I do have a psychology degree, so I don't know, whatever. So, what do we got here? So this is kind of the architecture diagram at a very high level. So down at the bottom, you'll have really 2 categories in every environment of virtual machines. So they're hardened virtual machines. I should just call them appliances because they're, you know, you avoid your warranty if you dive into them from a warranty standpoint. So you have a management console. That's what we've been spending all this time looking at. It's the boss. It's where you're going to go, you know, look and administer the product. Secondarily, the other category of virtual machines is our processing node. So when we think about looking at all of that flow of authentications, you know, in milliseconds, that's exactly what this thing has. It's a singular purpose. Get that flow of authentications, and, you know, yeah, Tim's done something. We can do the thing about it that the product says, and meanwhile, all of us have generated 10 others, and let's just let them go. It says to do anything. So the nodes, you'll typically have at least 2. That's the customer success requirement, because we want to be able to have that redundancy. So put them on 2 different hypervisors if you can, and you can also then parlay them out to different sites. You know, so we've got a few instances where we got a really slow WAN connection, or we have a really busy site. We don't want to pump that traffic. Whatever it might be, our customer success team will take a look at the network diagram, overlay that with best practices, and go. We recommend having them here, there, and those are going to be sized up. That's what let us do like the 50 user shop, you know, that does manufacturing and GL. They're my favorite large customer around here because we all know who they are, you know, people who live there. And we have larger customers. So third, and probably the least popular, I'll just put that out there, is we do run an adapter on our domain controllers. Runs in the user space as a service, so no reboot required. We keep way far away from the bowels of that domain controller. So no hooking LSAS, none of the kind of classic ways that we're going to interact with Active Directory, an agent on the domain controller. Really is just there. If you remember, kind of like the away phone cover with Prism. Now we're basically taking those authentications and just giving us a little U-turn copy of them to the node, and then it can come back and do something. So all of that happens in the sequence. And then last but not least, very intuitively, in some fashion, we'll hook you up with your MFA provider. So generally, that's an API for like Microsoft Office 3.0. YubiKeys. Anybody use YubiKeys at this point or want to?
I do for my M365
Okay.
global admins.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's the MFA that was recommended, the phishing resistant MFA. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we can
it's just
leverage
me and one other user.
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah.
Yeah, you could leverage those. You could go through a registration process.
Cool.
And then that little pop-up we saw, that
Mhm.
informational pop-up, actually becomes a, hey, please plug in your YubiKey.
Yeah.
Click here, and then it opens up a browser. Touch it.
Your code and touch it. Yeah.
Yeah, put it down. So, you know, really kind of these 4 components are going to be everywhere in just about every one of our customers. All these other things, are just dependent on what you guys want to accomplish. If you do have those YubiKeys, we'll probably use our SaaS version of our messaging service to know that you plugged it in. But if you don't need that, you don't have to have that. So these two categories, you, sir, had a question about redundancy early on. So cut off the head, the nodes keep going. They have a copy of all the rules. So we have to reboot this once in a while to update it. These guys march on. One of these gets cut down. Your domain controller's been effectively cross-linked in some fashion with our customer success team configuration to say, go to that. Sense. So, and then your domain controllers, they go down. Hopefully you have another one. But it will know if you go to the, it's crazy. Why would you have to system?
So ransomware event bringing things back up from a back. Are we backing those up as well, or like some services don't recommend to back them to supply them?
And now as automated backups, you'll lose some of your analytical data. It'll start looking, but you know, like all your policies, all those kind of things, relevant to day to day.
Where do those get backed up to?
Right now, automatic backups will go into AWS.
Okay.
Pretty soon it'll be that. So,
Okay.
That's probably.
So you're back.
So your back.
Yeah, the products are.
So the appliance would just reach out and grab its back up.
Utilities
Do a new one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, another. POC.
Proof of
Huh?
concept.
Oh yeah, POC. How do you POC? You first talk to these guys, and they'll get all kinds of information from you. But then, in fact, let's go over here. I heard you. I'm going to show you that. Something's got a link. I'm going to show you the back end of this, but happily, it is. So this is our successful. So you guys will see it as success. Because once the coworkers just, what's that?
You get success very.
You do. You actually do. There we go. So we'll set you up with this portal. It has everything you need. And what I'll do is walk you.
Jay, you're already up there.
Oh, actually, you guys have a, yes, that's my coworker, Ryan. Yeah, that's Brian Kelly in Denver. Your brothers or cousins, actually. That's pretty funny. I should get a selfie.
The same barber.
We should get a selfie. I'm like, yeah. So we'll go through some onboarding questions. Yeah, I'll kind of reiterate some of what this is, but some key elements. You guys will download the appliances. All you have to do is just get all your IP addressing ready, unpack these things, turn them on, hook them up to an ASCII version of our logo, the login prompts. Just stop there. I'll take you through the rest of that journey. Our prerequisites are all here. So everything around virtualization, I can guarantee you that out of the box, these are sized to handle anybody's environment. And we'll handle some good size. You'll run something we call our Silverfort deployment assistant. It's a cool little utility that's just going to make sure that you are ready to go. Your domain controllers, I should say, are ready to go. Used to be able to say that I could count on one hand the number of times I've come across an unhelpful domain controller, but I've moved to 2 hands now in just under 2 years. Mostly people know about them. Started. So one where after lunch, right around 1 o'clock to about 4 o'clock, one of the domain controllers just went haywire. Of course, we weren't there yet to tell them why, but they had to do some investigating because it was like just bumping around like 98, 100% constant. Didn't know about that. Okay.
Active Directory artifact.
So you'll just run this, it'll assess, things like latency, to meet the prerequisites and those system requirements and any conflicting software packages and things like that. It'll run for 24 hours and grab performance off that. So just a regular assessment of where's the CPU, where's the memory on this. Just give us summary data. Sure, again, insurance, your environment's healthy for both parties to make sure we're ready to go. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. Let us out of the network. Don't inspect our things, especially the CCA. You don't have to do DNS unless you really want to not install DNS. Domain controllers, for those of you running little VMware and you have VMware tools loaded, don't like that introspection button. It's pretty rare that it's there because VMware released this and broke all kinds of things. It broke Sophos when I worked there. It broke text for one of my customers. It's pretty rare. Once in a while we can see it. But here's all our requirements for your endpoint, exclusions, that kind of stuff. And create us a service account. And I love highlighting this. It's an impressive level of access advance. Let's zoom in here. Domain admin? No, let's read it. The unchecked box, by the way, well, anything that might be checked is about 70 stories below this. Right here. Just keep scrolling. You'll get there. And in fact, I know when people haven't unchecked that when they create it, because we show up in our own shadow admin here. Like that service. So, so you have to create that service account. That's what we use to scrape Active Directory. So what's privileged, what's not, correlate that with behavior. Once you have all of that done, what we do is we set up a 2-hour call. The first thing we're going to do is get virtual machines set up. We're going to get you connected to your MFA provider. We can put domain controller set up. And for a POC, if you have like a particular site and you just want to do those domain controllers, we can do that as long as we know those authentications are going to stay there. That makes sense. Favorite example, I've got a manufacturer in the area. 3 domain controllers main site, DR site, 1 domain controller. Last use case that we're testing. It's a legacy application. They want to get rid of it, but can't yet. And we don't see it in the logs. Having people log into it, 3, 4, like we shouldn't see it across the wire. And then we actually show it as a destination and we don't see it at all. And then guess what? We protect that one way out there. Really lame WAN connection. And then that's another one. Why is it going all the way over there? That's another problem for another day. But so we can do them all. That domain controller install takes all of about 5 to 7 minutes per, including getting the installer there, RDP session and everything. Once you know how to do it, we try to keep that pretty simple. So that's usually anywhere between about the first 45 minutes to hour and 15 minutes of that 2-hour call. The rest of it is literally just popping into the products. Like, what do you want to add MFA to? I'll have somebody RDP to a server. It's our first go. We'll find that RDP session in here. We'll click the C button. Summarize the policy just a little bit. And then the next time you go to RDP to that server, you get MFA. So it's, and then we go from there. Or how about deny access? It says except from this other server. You can go straight to that same one you just RDP to, but if you hit another one first, you can go. All kinds of things like that when you start testing that. Usually then, when we think about the other thing that we're going to do in kind of the convocative calls that we have is kind of a use case evaluation call. So anything we don't get to in the actual testing, that'll overflow into this call. But I also do this one because insights page that we saw, particularly like shadow admin, service account stuff, all of that takes some time to assess as we look at that data. So at least 48 hours out, usually about 3 or 4 business days, that all together. Once in a while, this is what I've been doing lately is making that an hour and a half. And while we're doing that, I'll also gather data to put together a presentation. And so if you guys need to get approval, you'll have somewhere around a 30 to 45 slide presentation. You can cherry pick whatever you want out of it. It's all the stuff that I'll highlight to call justified purchase. That also might be of interest, like the frontline stuff. See, large, odd situations. It's good. And then, we can, if you want to, we can take that presentation instead of just providing it to you, we'll actually present that to whoever. You might have 2 or 3 folks that are through the whole process of the POC, but a leader wants to see, well, what did you glean? Tell me about it. We'll be happy to do that as well. And that's up to you. Most often, it's not 50-50, I'd say. A lot of times folks are just okay with the presentation and seeing.
Imagine some people probably have some use cases in mind, but the beauty is that you get to run this.
Yeah.
Right, for 24 hours and then and then you get to discover, right? Because it's one of those you don't know what you don't know kind of thing, which is really helpful.
I've really,
for this kind of thing.
I've really taken that approach. It's let's go find something. Let's dig around it. Just run through all this. Sometimes they're focused. Just no front nine, completely remediate. Okay, but look at your locked accounts. Hundreds of them. Trying to authenticate so why. Here's one of my favorites recently. $sign machine account that we saw earlier. Every VDI machine that came up generated a ton of authentications using that account. Clone with cache credentials, system admin account. Took a little look at it. But
that wouldn't be something that nobody.
Account in there.
If you don't know VDI and you don't know link clones and that kind of stuff, you wouldn't even think about
it. And on the order of 10 million.
Yeah.
So it was
It's a couple.
So I mean, we cut out 10 million bad authentications from the bank. I mean, that was,
Anybody got any questions for Ken from hey, what do you love? What do you hate? What'd you get that you didn't know you were going to get? How are you using it? Type perspective.
Go easy on the hate part.
I hate that you can't delete from those. You got the add button, so you can add a host to a service account. But you can't remove it.
Yeah, you can just turn it off.
You can turn off the allow, but you can't remove it.
So I've heard that you're.
But that's a minor. I think we went through the POC.
Well, no, sorry. I mean, in previous lives.
Like Veronis.
I
right?
Yeah, we also have.
That's why I'm like,
Just keep walking this way. So
Yeah, we have Silverfort, CrowdStrike. Yeah, we believe in the onion theory. Many layers.
Right.
And Silverfort's a great visibility tool. Before we got that, we just didn't know what we didn't know.
Mhm.
And one of the first use cases I had was we have this SQL Server account that has a horribly insecure password, but it's tattooed into SQL servers from 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't want to go changing the password because who knows if it's been put into a stored procedure somewhere. Or and so we used Silverfort to figure out everywhere it logs in to and from, and we set block. And so if it tries to log in anywhere else, because it's ultimate domain admin.
Of course.
Yeah. Why wouldn't it?
So it's a domain admin with a never expiring password that's only 5 characters long.
Apple.
So now it can only log in to and from 2 different machines in the entire environment.
That's it.
And until those 2 machines die, once those 2 machines die, then we can just disable it entirely. Kill it dead. But there's one application still using one of those SQL servers that we just can't get rid of.
Yeah.
It still runs on a server 2003 server.
But
And
information
nothing
is power.
supports server 2003, so you can't put an agent on that server anymore.
Right.
But you can still manage it with Silverfort.
You actually raised a really good point that I totally skipped over. And this was really big in the beginning of last year.
this year we finally might be able to kill it.
Um,
We finally got our records retention policy fully finalized, 7 years now. so-
Yeah, definitely.
like,
Use cases.
think about the insights, like the Fred Niner stuff, like authentication protocols. So you think about a legacy system.
Yeah.
Again, another Michigan-based large customer, NTLM version 1, they had an application. They've been around since I think my mother was in elementary school. I don't know, and so this one particular set of servers and this one particular application is getting completely rebuilt. Like that data is just going to be exported, and that whole thing is going to be disposed of, right? So it's not like they're going to try to upgrade it. They're trying, it's just like building that into this other thing. But literally, they have a 2-year plan from the beginning of last year to make that migration, because this is like a key element to their business model. So until then, it's online. And so finding what was generating the NTLM version 1 traffic and where to and where from was extremely important for that. Then what we did was create one of those authentication firewall rules that said, when we see NTLM version 1 traffic, allow it from those machines that can't but create it. Everybody else can. So if I come in with my laptop, I try to use that weak encryption protocol in their domain. The domain controllers themselves just go.
Silverfort is super common in manufacturing.
It is.
We got a lot of old.
Does it identify what type of?
Yes.
Okay, so like I can
Yeah,
point out which accounts using what type of control, like.
So
Yeah, 75. Well, I mean, whatever that
Um,
case is,
Because
because
if we're trying to eliminate like RC4, right?
Yeah.
We did that and then I heard a lot of screaming in 2 seconds. Like,
yeah.
like what's happening, right?
Can I-
Are we down? All right, no, roll back.
Yeah.
So
let's get rid of
it will
this.
be good intel to
Yeah,
figure
in
out
fact,
what do
that
you
was-
got going on and then where it's going. So it's like,
So that combo five. So the filters don't let you pick the specifics, but you'll see them. In fact, here let's go pick. See if anything is left. And then look at Scott. Depending on which it is, or
It doesn't show you
that's it.
specific cipher.
I think Kerberos will.
Kerberos does, but not NTLM.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of that's because the domain controllers just don't log that. Or don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
that
unless
information
They
available.
don't technically
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
it just meets the criteria, so they pass it,
So I mean, one thing you would want to consider is
unless you turn it off.
trying to turn off NTLM as much as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because you
and
get the visibility in Kerberos so much better.
Right.
And this will help you identify who's still using NTLM. So that you
that's what the
remediate those
issue
machines.
is. Like
And then you can
you
build a
have
firewall
legacy
around it.
NTLMs.
Yeah, I mean,
Have to get it.
obviously there's a million different things that they're doing, but the two, and you might have seen it in the emails that Aaron has sent out, the two that stand out to me is number one, I can further extend my MFA purchase, whether that's Duo, Microsoft, whatever you're doing, I can now spread that investment further than I could before with Silverfort. The second one, and in my opinion, even if you take out the MFA side of it, that is so much more important, is I can control where those logins are being used. Now, at the end of the day, if I'm looking at security as a reality, if I can eliminate all of that lateral movement inside my environment based on logins, I can eliminate the problems that we see from an infrastructure standpoint with security, where I have all these flat networks, right?
Right.
If you're administrating or you're getting into a new organization that you bought, more than likely it's going to be a flat network, because people don't do VLANs anymore. They don't do security by obscurity. They don't do that kind of stuff. That's just not the way the world is wired today. So lateral movement for the bad guys is easy peasy. They can touch everything, they can see everything, they can do everything as soon as they get on one box, right? If I can say, fine, I've got flat network, fine, you've got access to my domain, you've got an account, but you can't use that account anywhere other than where I say you can, he can be there, but he can't do anything. And the other thing we know about bad guys is if they can make progress somewhere, they'll keep trying to make progress. If they can't, they duck and go to the people they can.
Yeah.
So there's a whole type of thought process around it. Sometimes we just have to make the spigot adrift instead of wide open, and we can get the guys off of our backs, right? They're not going to spend time trying to. Well, I mean, if you're GM or somebody, they're going to keep trying. No matter how secure you are, they're going to keep trying because they know if they can get that logo on their hack list, then they're gods in the world, right? But most organizations are not big enough for them to waste that kind of time. They're in this to make money. Wasting time is not making money, right? So we have to think the way they think.
I think one other thing, just not fully
I think we're sitting on the wrong end of the
understanding everything,
table.
is the policy. So like when we talk about folks trying to create different policies, right, and all the different applications that we talk about, right? And number one, it's the time to do it. It's the other of like recognizing patterns to then easily create policy and then to standardize policy and then finding ways, again, to make it easier so you actually do it, right? So I think that that's a really good tool here because you may not recognize some of the nuances between it or, oh, maybe I should consider this extra level, right? I think that that's kind of an overarching thing that I feel is really valuable.
And being able to take a policy thought process and apply it across your entire organization as opposed to one policy here,
Correct.
one policy here, one policy here. Now I have one integral policy that is, I apply it differently in different mechanisms inside the organization.
Right.
But it basically is zero trust across the board.
Right.
And unless there's a policy that overrides that zero trust, I always don't trust anything. So, and with the information that you get from Silverfort, you can build that, right? You have that intelligence, that visibility to do that.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark and hoping for the best. And I'm a huge, I love Silverfort from that standpoint. If you want to add another layer of amazing on top of that, and I can't even sell it because I'm not a partner, but I used to work for Infoblox. And if you want more visibility into other things as well as authentication, that's the other way you go. Is now I get 100% of visibility all the time because I manage my authentication. And with Infoblox, I can manage my DNS and DHCP 100%. Inside my organization, I have 100% visibility into everything that the bad guys would ever use. DNS, IP, and authentication. You get all of that wrapped together, bad guy is going to have a bad day trying to get inside you and do something.
So a couple of things. One I'd heard, I'm a Zscaler customer.
Yeah.
So you said that was not so great.
Just turn off SSL inspection for our node.
Okay.
Ticket. Yeah, it breaks part of our retrieval.
And then the other one is passwordless is high on my to-do list this year. So I see Hyper there. We tested Beyond Identity and we tested Secret Double Octopus.
Okay.
My security guys are on with Hyper right now to talk about POC. So how do you tie in those guys?
We'll use their authenticator.
Okay.
So if we want that second factor, we'll.
Okay. Yes. We've got so much that we do with Dropbox and partners and stuff like that. So everybody's we get a ton of fake Dropbox snacks and people authenticate. They can't be fished if they don't.
Ken's pulling the ripcord. I gotta go.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. Stop at Todd's desk before you go. We'll get that.
Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Um,
Helpful.
I do have a question.
Okay, good.
Intra ID.
Yeah.
Is it pulling all those logs
Yes.
in? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because that's mainly what we use is 365, with our file shares, everything. We started during COVID, so
Okay.
we have like a hybrid
Yeah.
model, and everything is cloud-based, and I'm more worried about protecting the cloud identities than my on-prem stuff because I have such a small footprint on-prem. It's cool and handy, but I have 3 service accounts.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Right. So I saw you had one page that had a map on it. Does that pull
Oh,
in?
yeah. It does.
Dude, I've been looking for a product to do that since I started this because I know where my users are. I do have users all from the US, but like I know that Dan should be logging in from Salt Lake City. If I see Dan log in from Chicago, I know something's up, right? So I actually found a script to use Microsoft's Data Explorer to do the same thing because I couldn't find a product to do it. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to see was more the cloud identity protection is what I'm worried about. You know, I have conditional access policies written, but like, does it always catch? Does it catch it? Like, you don't know unless you're looking at those logs consistently. So
One of the things we do with conditional access too is like a lot of people want to know 100%. I've had people with stacks of conditional access policies and invested in product.
Yeah,
Whatever.
like I said,
We actually have
I
a bridging
Joey.
concept where we can actually reach out to Microsoft and say, this is going to be our action set. So instead of us saying, we're going to MFA, we'll do whatever. We're going to hand that over to Microsoft. Here's the conditional access policy.
This will be
do what it
obviously
says.
recording, so we'll get it.
So that's how we,
Yeah.
the phone call.
yeah,
And yeah,
Other things like phone number matching.
whenever you're ready,
So there's
we
things
can
in
talk
coverage.
more.
yeah,
The really cool
yeah.
thing is to make sure.
That's what keeps me up at night. Like I could, if you got time, I can tell you a whole story. Not of our bank, but another bank that you got hit with some wire fraud because a
You don't have to worry about
part-time
all the
employee,
artifacts and stuff.
she only did like insurance stuff for him. Fell for phishing. They got into her account, used that access to fish another user in the wire department.
I don't know. if
And actually, it was about this time a year ago.
For their data yet, so it
Happened during Martin Luther King weekend. The Wednesday before, they sent out a phishing campaign from that compromised user's email. It hit like 1,000 people, and that's how I knew about it because it hit our bank. We do some work with them. It's like, why is this person emailing us this link to log into 365? So my boss, he calls their president, like you got a situation on your hands. So IT is fighting that fire of the phishing event. Meanwhile, they fake a scanned document from one of the branch's scanners, a wire form, sent it to the wire department, made it look like it came from the branch to the wire department. It was Friday before holiday weekend. Wire department doesn't double check it, sends out, a few $100,000 of some customer's money. They don't catch it until Tuesday when the customer calls and says, "Where's my money? Like, what is this transaction?"
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to meet you guys. Have a good day.
So yeah, wired out all that money and they didn't know it until Tuesday. And IT was so busy with the phishing thing that they weren't looking at their internal accounts. Yeah, dude, it was bad. Yeah, so they couldn't retrieve the funds because it had been so long from that Friday afternoon when the funds were sent that by Tuesday when it was caught, it was gone. So yeah, but what if they were looking at their user logins, they would have known that part-time employee should have never been logging in from Chicago or Washington D.C. or Tennessee or wherever it was coming from. Yeah, like so I mean almost every day I'm looking at that map and I know where users are logging in from, but like it's you got to be able to detect those anomalies, and so that's why I'm looking at something like this that would do a better job. Like, I'd really love something that would alert if somebody logs in some I guess a unfamiliar location or whatever, different state, whatever. Yeah, I've got articles. Yeah.
With article, if you could shut
Well,
it down.
You can only do it by country, right? So like, I block everything that's not U.S. based, but like I'm worried about them, coming in from.
They still alert me when
Yeah.
somebody's in the country that's accepted.
Yeah. Well, I only have one country on that list, so yeah. We're in Ohio. Like we should only be, logins from Ohio, but yeah. So cool. That's If you guys do it, I'm sure I can tie in if I do a POC and see those logins because those are the important ones to me, not so much the local stuff. The stuff's cool, but
Yeah, it's definitely one we could do right now.
yeah.
I got
we bought this company, Resonate,
Okay.
with the Z, because everything has to pull.
Of course, yeah.
But I just actually had a conversation with the product manager. Largely going to be taking and you're cherry picking things at a time to bring into classic platforms that we have.
Okay.
So what they did was just entirely focused around Azure, AWS, so on and so forth, just cloud platforms. But a lot of the same concepts that we have. You know, identity security is the focus, not expenditure. You know, some of these other platforms.
Yeah.
Just within the product. So that'll be occurring over the course of the year.
Cool.
We have about a 6-week update cycle to our
Okay.
product. So like
Your 6
it's actually
weeks,
a
you're
natural
going
work
to
here.
Yeah,
The more
yeah.
that I've like assimilated and changed
Then
how
it
I
changes,
present
yeah.
something, yeah, it's like I mean